Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back with another video from Totally Not Mark, and we are checking out his first part of his review of Golden Wind. Really loved Golden Wind. Golden Wind I've only watched once. Actually, tell a lie, I watched the first 7 episodes twice. So I remember I watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventure parts 1 to 4 myself. Started seeing my girlfriend. Started watching part 5, and then I was like, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is amazing. So she's like, oh really? So I stopped watching part 5, went back to part 1 with her, watched it all the way through, and then part 5 something we enjoyed together, and really liked part 5. It's very different to the other parts, and that's what I like. I like the parts like they stand out, and this is like very like gangstery Italy, ooh, drug cartel and all that stuff with stand fights and that, and I really like it. I really like it. Again, it's like part 3 is still gonna be my favourite, but I think part 5 is better than 4. But 4 still got the better villain. Anyway, they're my personal opinions. Let's see what Totally Not Mark has to say on this, shall we? Fighting gold!
Alright people, this is a complicated one. On one hand, I loved Diamond is Unbreakable, but now that I've been through the first 21 episodes of this one,
it's very bingeable part 5, isn't it? Jeez.
For my heart. And I say that because I blitzed through this arc.
Don't blame you.
I even think I ended up watching all 21 episodes that I'll be covering in this video over the course of 24 hours.
As soon as every episode ends, you're like, whoa, what's happening next?
And what's more is, this is an arc I can honestly say is unlike any of the other 4, and I mean that in the best possible way. There's a clear attention to detail and a design behind it that gave it so much of an upside for me. So, today, I can't wait to share with you all my very first impressions of, thoughts on, and review for the fabled 5th part of this manga epic. This is the brutally bloody, the heart-stoppingly compelling, and the relentlessly intense JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Golden Wind.
Go! Fighting gold. Alright.
As I mentioned before, this week I'll be covering the first half or the first 21 episodes of the 5th part to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Golden Wind. Set in 2001 Italy, it's the first part to take place almost immediately after the events of the prior, which was set
just because Koichi ties it in a little bit, doesn't he, with JoJo?
There are some key differences right off the bat with this one. Obviously, these surroundings are gorgeous and faithful to its setting of Italy. If any of you have taken the time to look up anything about Araki, you'll know that this guy loves Italy.
Alright, cool.
And perhaps more critically, his characters throughout this series have never looked regular or normal, for whatever that word is worth. In the beginning, he would opt to have characters with biceps bigger than the
huge
character
muscles.
with Mr. Universe poses.
Boom.
Then, slowly, over the course of the series, he replaced muscles with clothing, and there's nothing wrong with that, if not for this part, because holy crap! Okay, so he fills the world with regular people wearing regular clothes, and then we see this guy wandering around town.
They just start out like a sore thumb, don't they?
Don't wear stuff like this
at all.
Or, maybe they do. I mean, I don't know. I haven't been outside since February of 2020.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. Going into all of the character designs for the story. Every one of these main characters, and I mean everyone, has a unique design boasting outlandish clothing that would make any grandmother shake their head in disapproval. Who would have thought that when he drew Jotaro's school uniform and hat, which, by the way, made sense when he first drew it, but over the course of the story began to fuse with his head, who would have known that after seeing all of that, Araki was actually holding back?
Yeah, man.
Wonder what this guy's dreams are like. Now, I'm right now, and I think
what do you think of?
Reason. This story is easily the most brutal and graphic in the series.
It gets violent, man.
If you didn't see my review for part 1 of this series, it's obvious that a lot of the stuff that gets left on the chopping room floor is the gore from the series. And so, you can well imagine what the manga for this section looks like. And yet, it starts out in a surprisingly quiet way. Introduction to the new main character. While much more subtle
Giorno's introduction is cool, man.
Introductions, this one is surprisingly effective. Which is an appropriate take, I think, because Giorno is a remarkably understated personality. Not
the way he cons them out of their money using his stand ability is cool.
Yeah, walking past a considerable number of crimes, he immediately distinguishes himself from Jonathan, Joseph, Jotaro, and Josuke, who all would have intervened in all of these encounters. Right from the get-go, it paints a much darker image of the world we are entering into.
He's just part of
and
it,
tells
yeah.
a little bit about Giorno as a result. Through a brief
He's grew up
telling
in this
interaction
world,
as he
yeah.
helps some tourists retrieve their formerly stolen wallet, he introduces us to his brand of justice and morality. Stealing from the two girls, it's clear that he only cares about what concerns or affects him directly for the most part. However, when he sees a small hungry child, he goes out of his way to buy him some ice cream using the money he just stole. This small but character-defining gesture, while brief, becomes part of a much larger vision or
Powerful
motivation
anime
for
only
Giorno
stuff.
in this story, who effectively, when it all boils down to it at the end of the day, wants to acquire enough power to change people's lives for the better. And this isn't the only instance where
I want to be a
Koichi
gangster.
either. In fact, he does so at almost every single turn in this story. For instance, right after we learn that Giorno is a con man, we cut to the airport where he grifts and scams
Well, he does the
tourists,
ear
but
thing. He only does it the one
where
time,
this
doesn't he?
little fellow arrives on the scene.
Come in here.
Oh, you are so cute. I love your cute little smiles.
After taking out a competing grifter in Luca,
Leaky Eye Luca.
have a brief but very fun encounter. Apparently, Heaven's Door, Rowan's ability, can give you information that neither he nor the person receiving the information ever had, like being able to speak fluent Italian. So automatically he becomes the most
That's from the
powerful,
OVAs.
valuable stand user in existence. I mean, in the last act, they could have just written into Jotaro's head, I know what Yoshikage Kira's new name is, and we could have forgone all of that story. Ain't that fun? Anyway, once Giorno tries to steal Koichi's luggage, the two of them
I wonder if he's going to
find
review the
out through
OVAs. That'd be
various
good.
hiccups that they are both stand users. With the main takeaways from this conflict being, Giorno successfully steals Koichi's passport and money, has a stand that can create life and deal damage to anyone that would damage that life, and Koichi gains some respect or favor from Giorno as he never went all out against him, proving to him that he meant no harm. There are a lot of subtle things like that at play in this story, which make it, I think, a much more adult version of a JoJo's story. Oh,
This
and did I
is a
mention
very adult
that
story.
Giorno's father is Dio. Well, it is, so that's a thing. Apparently,
Yeah, that's
what
just
Koichi is
something
there to
we're just shown
investigate
through a
to see
picture,
what
isn't
this
it?
new
Like,
young spawn of JoJo's devil
where do you get the picture though?
is up to.
Oh, Bucciarati.
It is around this time in the story where I noticed that this tale is making a clear effort to not only change a number of key positions usually given to particular personalities within the story, but structurally, once again, Araki decides to shake things up completely, and in a direction I never thought it would go. While I thought Diamond is Unbreakable served to combine all of the main narrative attributes of its three older brother parts exceptionally well, I personally thought that while the structure of it was fun, I also felt that, while better than Stardust Crusaders' episodic nature, Diamond is Unbreakable lacked direction at a lot of pivotal moments for me specifically. Now, I want to clarify right off the bat that that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. A lot of people enjoy slice of life hijinks, and it worked remarkably well for that story, given how attached to the characters I became and how nostalgic I was towards the very end of that story. However, with all of that said, and taking nothing away from Diamond is Unbreakable, structurally speaking, I think Golden Wind is much more suited to my personal sensibilities as a viewer. Everything flows together
it does.
remarkably well. Every
You got all these
encounter
different
makes sense
characters,
to
you got all these
the
different
narrative,
things,
and
you've
each
got
episode informed the next.
the
Giorno
world's been
wants to
set
climb
up,
the
you've
ranks
got
of
all
the
the
mob
drug
empire to
cartels
gain
and
power
everything.
influence over his struggling town.
Really
He meets
interesting
Bruno,
to know how
fights
these
some
people
regulars,
fit in and how they're
this
going to
is a great
change it.
fight, by the way. He befriends Bruno and then meets his boss to try to get a job. His boss tasks him with holding this lighter and keeping the light aflame for 24 hours.
Yep.
Koichi causes trouble during this time
Black
because
Sabbath.
Giorno stole his passport. They get into trouble together and fight a Shadow Man, also a great fight, by the way. Giorno proves himself to the boss, but he
Black
was
Sabbath.
only doing so he could get a chance at assassinating him. And he does so, and now he works with Bruno. Everything flows naturally
It's so
into the
sick.
next
Yep,
main
it's
plot
like, whoa.
point, all the while taking the main cast and every supporting character's motivations into consideration. Making for
They
me
all have really
Golden
good
Wind a prime
backstories as well as to
example
why
of,
they are
and
with
so
him.
therefore storytelling, while not sacrificing what brought it to the dance in the first place, its creativity and artistic expression. While I know that what I'm about to say is very English school major nerdy, out of all the action and awesomeness these first few episodes gave me, my favorite part is easily when Koichi comes into Giorno's room at the worst possible time. And it's my favorite because it's a perfectly executed tension riser. This isn't happening just because. It's happening as a direct result of who Giorno is. He stole Koichi's passport, and so therefore, Koichi is looking for his passport where Giorno is. And speaking of Koichi, something that really caught my eye in particular during this section also was once again another first for the series. On top of this being the first with a morally complex protagonist and the first one to be directly related to Dio, this is also the first sequel story to not incorporate the prior cast in any meaningful way. Apart from the first couple of episodes in the first half, Golden Wind doesn't make any use of Koichi or Jotoro's characters, instead opting to carry the entire story on the backs of a brand new cast of colourful characters, all the while pursuing a goal that ties them all together.
Yeah, Koichi, I think, is just for like us as the audience to like get flow, for it to flow for us.
Entertaining setup, but setup nevertheless.
I mean, Koichi doesn't need to be there, it could stand on its own, but for us to know it still ties in with JoJo's world, I think that's why Koichi is there.
With their old capo dead and his fortune to claim for themselves, they embark on a journey to the island of Capri, now as a larger team with Giorno in their ranks. Journey to Capri.
Oh my god, the stuff on the boat's so weird.
Half of this exciting tale is that Araki, despite taking a much more linear, serialized approach, still employed mini side stories throughout this arc, but not in the same way he had done so in the past, with arcs like Stardust Crusaders and even Diamond is Unbreakable. To a large extent, he would often establish the goal and make the means with which they achieve that goal known from the very beginning. Go to Egypt or find the killer, etc.
Yeah.
However, with this one, Araki opted to create two separate goals. Find out the identity of the boss so they can kill him, and with the second one being discovered during this particular section. And so, while these side stories are complete stories into and of themselves in their own respect, they are still very much intrinsically part of the original ongoing story, building upon material and setup from the prior episodes. For instance, this section begins on the back of Giorno's assassination of Bruno's team capo, and as such is built upon the back of that consequence. Bruno introduces Giorno to his team, and over the course of this adventure we come to learn about each of these new characters until we become intimately familiar with them. Heck, I even know all of their names, and that's really rare for someone like me.
I'm terrible with names.
Bruno, Fugo, Mista, Leon, and Naranzia, the beautifully Italian name.
Oh, he said it with so much confidence and still got it wrong. Okay, hello, native Italian speaker. Can you please tell us how you pronounce the name of that character in JoJo?
Narancia.
Narancia.
Despite right now only being familiar with Giorno and maybe Bruno to a lesser extent, by the time this story reached its midpoint, I found that I loved certain members of this team more than the main character Giorno, and had a bond established with all of them. Similarly to Stardust Crusaders that put a heavy focus on the side characters, Golden Wind is in all intents and purposes.
I can't wait for him to like talk about what happens with you know who in the next bit. Oh, when we get that person that returns. Ha ha ha.
Is the youngest of the group. He's lovable and a bit of an airhead. Fugo is effectively the opposite of Narancia, being a bit abrasive and something of a young prodigy. Leon is sort of the tough guy of the group. As a former police officer, he acts as the detective of the team. And finally, we have Mista. I love Mista. He's got a great energy around him and is possibly the friendliest of the group. And we learn all about these key character elements through the first scene and subsequent scenes that follow shortly after they hop into the boat bound for Capri, with the goal of claiming their
the mystery of what's going on the boat
for themselves. And once the first bit of trouble makes itself known to the group, right as they were sailing, we get the first hint as to how Araki will be structuring this story.
Yes.
This Capri storyline is spent on two major battles with one quick consequence at the end that leads to the rest of the story. Again, keeping in theme with every action informing the next, this first battle takes place on a yacht, and through this interaction we learn about Leon's backstory as a former police officer wanting to make a greater change in the world, as well as his absolutely insanely useful stand power that allows him to relive certain scenes from different perspectives in the past. Once we overcome that gent of the ship that turns out to be another ship within the same ship, we land on Capri and figure out more about the character of Mista. The most interesting element to both of these encounters, apart from allowing the audience to get to know these characters while also
what's Mista's thing with the four? He doesn't like things in fours, or does like them in fours?
Character we know, Giorno. Leon refuses to show his stand ability in front of Giorno, proving to us that he still doesn't trust him. However, Mista on the island doesn't have remotely the same hang-up.
Yeah. Sort it out. Ciao, ciao. So sick.
Surface, Mista's stand ability seems to be sort of cartoonish and somewhat limited. What he ends up contributing to the story is some of the most entertaining portions of it. Everything from humor to sadness to edge-of-your-seat action. Araki constructed this story to feel as though everyone and anyone is capable of meeting their end at any time. And they almost do on so many occasions.
It does happen a lot, doesn't it? You think, oh my god, is he actually going to die?
Would be either incapacitated and later learn their lesson or wander off.
Kage Films voiced this bad guy.
Die. And not just die, they get brutally murdered by the good guys. Alleviated somewhat by the colourful and lighthearted interactions they share with each other, these death scenes are more brutal than any I've come across in the past.
They are.
Employing in this section with Mista some overdone encounters like a chase on a truck that is made all the more fun utilising stand powers, making the circumstances feel so fresh and enjoyable. Ending in a Clint Eastwood type standoff with this guy getting shot in the head real good.
Twice, same spot.
No, that's a lot of damage! It soon becomes obvious that there are a number of competing gangs looking for the same fortune that they are, and once they find it, they too come across a gentleman in possession of their next mission, to deliver the boss's daughter home. For Bruno,
Well, she starts off like a right little
this
bitch.
is ideal, giving them an excuse to get close to the boss in some capacity and assassinate him. This is their once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and their team doesn't need to even know about it. Narancia versus Small Man. Once the boss's daughter, her name is Trish by the way, arrives on the scene in inconspicuous clothing as a janitor, she soon chucks the getup and throws on her
Yowzers.
ridiculous outfit, to match the rest of the main
Yes, so
characters.
she doesn't stand
So,
out.
as I guess not to draw attention to herself.
Yes.
Also, she's super high maintenance and so forces Narancia to go out and grab some supplies before they make their way to the next stop.
Oh mate, this stand battle's amazing.
This is one of the coolest ideas for a fight I've come across in a long while, and certainly within JoJo. While the plot slowly progresses towards a satisfying finish, I hope, I really enjoyed the narrative decision made by Araki during these combat sequences. Instead of isolating the lifespan of particular fights to the pages of a couple chapters, or in the case of prior arcs, one episode, this story allows the fight to breathe and explore all the possibilities their powers offer them in tandem with this
Different
setting
situations
they
to get put in
find
as well.
This battle with Narancia and the guy that can make himself small is honestly brilliant. Not just for showcasing Narancia's cool and powerful stand, but also because of the worsening circumstances this shrinking man's stand power can do if enough time elapses. In essence, if Narancia can't put away this guy fast, his chances will only get worse and worse.
Oh yeah,
as he
man.
slowly
The
but surely
longer he
shrinks
leaves it, the worse it's
into
gonna
his own
get.
feet. And let me tell you, they do everything with this premise. With the elements used in the ultimate defeat of this shrinking man being equally engaging and satisfying, a lot of the dialogue in prior fights would consist of immediate concerns brought forth by the present battle. However, much of these dialogue exchanges in Golden Wind concern themselves primarily with motivations linked directly to the broader story, while also serving as a great launching off point to inform us, the audience, about the backstory of characters like Narancia, to help build a bond with them, and in the case of the shrinking man, we get to see some of his past too, through which we learn about his extended team of stand
the way he
users on the trail of
terminates that guy. Oh
Giorno's
yeah, this is the way we get like an introduction to all the bad guys going on as well, isn't
an
it?
email directly from the boss. They need to go to the archaeological park where there's a hidden key for a vehicle that they can use to bring his daughter home. They split the team. One half with Giorno goes to get the key, the other half with Bruno stays here and guards the daughter of the boss. The archaeological park. Our time spent at this archaeological park once again gives us an opportunity to get to know a new member of the squad, all the while building a new bond between the characters on screen and progressing the plot. During this section, we come to learn more about Fugo with an IQ of 152. He managed to get into university remarkably early. However, was kicked out after he attacked Professor. However, as has been the case with almost all of these backstories, including Giorno's, the
They
initial
are
description
tragic.
of their past doesn't seem to match up with how the events actually measured up when explored. These are all victims in some shape or form, with Fugo particularly
Anime only
falling
edition.
into that category, helping to
Oh,
explain
that's
how and why he
weird.
is so detached and aggressive so much of the time. The battle that takes
Alright.
place is awesome, with a focus, of course, following Fugo as he gets trapped inside the mirror dimension. Where have I seen that before? But
Oh.
both Giorno and
It's weird because I felt like that villain looked very Part 3-esque as well.
As I'm editing this video, it literally just occurred to me that he's been saying Leone wrong the entire time, which was really funny because he only started saying that first name because he was too scared to say Abakio. I give up. I give up. I give up. I tried. I'm sorry.
And thanks to their combined effort and some jaw-droppingly clever thinking on behalf of Giorno, Fugo's ridiculously powerful stand gets a target to take out. However, what was brought to my attention during this section wasn't necessarily all of that, though it was knocking around in there, but what I really was thinking about was how little of Giorno I've gotten to see during this part of the story. Once the setup
Yeah,
in the
he is
initial
just
episodes
there,
wrap up,
isn't he?
Giorno feels very much like a stand-in for the audience at times, allowing for exposition to be explained.
Like he's seeing like what we're seeing and getting everything explained to him for us.
Side characters, making the entire team themselves feeling less like side characters and more like main characters.
They are.
And no section made me feel this more than what comes next after they discover the key and the vehicle that it fits into. Battle on the train. Of the three major battles before this climax, I have to say that this is easily my favourite part of the first half and battle therein. And it's not even remotely close with the others. The level of creativity and
oh mate, yeah, the stuff happens on the train, sick.
From every frame and
this is where everyone starts getting older?
Over the course of 3 entire episodes, the gang arrive at the train station, followed through the point of view of the villains we saw in the flashback earlier through Small Man. During this encounter, Araki spends almost equal amounts of time with the good guys and the bad guys, making it throughout feel as though
got the hook, hasn't he? The fish hook.
potentially fail or come away with a win here. And the funny part is that Giorno barely participates, with Araki instead opting to make full use of Mista and Bruno's characters during this fight sequence, and it's all the better for it. When I say that this fight has everything, I mean it. There's some mystery in the bad guys trying to discover where the good guys have gone to in the train. They're in a tortoise, by the way. There's some emotional development for a character of Pesci that undergoes his own character arc within these episodes. There's a sense of mourning on both sides after they think that they've lost their respective partners. There's ludicrously engaging action with some of the most creative implementation of stand abilities in this series, and it elevates every character directly involved. So much so that the two characters of Mista and Bruno became my two favorite characters within this part of the story, elevating them both above Giorno for me. And that's just the mechanics within this fight. Araki makes full use of the location that this takes place in too. They kill a bunch of people trapped in a train, they fight on the roof, they fight on the sides, they fight on the inside, and they even stop the train and finish it outside. At numerous instances during this encounter, Araki made full use of what the audience was aware of and what the characters weren't to help build tension also. And he did this with both sides. For instance, when one of the two brothers starts to use his stand to age people up, we watch on as Bruno's team trying to piece together what's going on.
Yeah, like why is it happening?
Yeah. Conversely, with the other side of the action, towards the very end, Bruno needs to make full use of his stand power in the most incredible and literally heart-stoppingly intense way he can. All the while we watch on as the fishing rod-wielding Pesci struggles to figure out where he went. I could talk about this section of the story and this battle specifically for ages, but in the interest of time, these, if nothing else, are the episodes I think that will sell you on part 5 if you are not a fan of it yet. It's honestly incredible and the best by far in the series. Delivering Trish to her father. I'm not the biggest fan of the next conflict that largely concerns Giorno, not because I don't like Giorno, but because the battle itself felt sort of small and anticlimactic.
Yeah.
Perhaps because it came immediately after my favorite part of the story, so let's jump ahead to Venice instead. There's another terrific section of the story focusing on an with Giorno and Mista that absolutely solidified Mista as my second favorite character in the story. It has
the ice dude's so sick and he's so like aggressive.
That I've watched so far is top to bottom gorgeous with some truly brilliant animated moments. On the topic of Mista, I adore his personality and his tenacity during this combat sequence, and his little sex pistols are always a treat.
They
the
are
drama in this
funny,
fight
man.
is fittingly high, and the action provided was thrilling. Probably my second favorite fight, along with Naranji's.
Mate, the way they actually finish him off is so sick.
Very well have the best ending of all the fights I've seen.
Yeah, man.
One rather important critique I have for this section, however, is perhaps how it handled the character of Trish. As the daughter of the boss and the package that they've had to deliver over the course of this story, the only things she's really contributed to it have been some small few snarky comments as well as some comedic fan service during the midpoint, which I never really enjoy. It's not my thing.
Yeah.
Given how much time has been spent with this team, I would have liked to have cared a bit more about Trish at all by the time she ultimately got delivered to her father. As she's taken up the elevator to meet her long-lost familial patriarch, she finally starts to show glimpses of character and uncertainty through the rough and brash exterior she's putting up throughout this trip. This is great, but what would have been much more effective is having this sort of exposition earlier on
beforehand.
In the trip. That way tension could potentially build more effectively on their way to the tower.
I agree with that.
Maybe it might even give more of a motivation to Bruno. Maybe he could have been the one to talk her into it, and once things inevitably go awry once they get to the island in Venice, there could have been more
like
reason
what's
for him to
happened?
blame himself and take personal responsibility for her capture and possible death. I thought Trish offered the opportunity to be a rich character with tons to offer the narrative in order to up the stakes. However, instead, she came across much more like a damsel in distress, or possibly more accurately a MacGuffin or plot device used to forward the narrative to the midpoint climax like she ultimately did. I hope that by the time I get around to the rest of the second half, she plays a much larger role that offers more to the story than a mute animal could otherwise have achieved. One thing I want to say also about the big bad of this arc is that, while I appreciate they wanted to create an insurmountable or intimidating force to overcome using their powers in creative ways, I sort of feel as though Araki has gone to the time manipulation well one too many times during these stories.
Always is like
Since stats have
time
been introduced,
control,
the
isn't
big bad
it?
of the arc has always had on some level time manipulation abilities.
I can't wait
And
for
after
Totally Not
giving
try and
it some
explain
thought,
how his
I've
stand
grown to
ability works when
understand
it's
why,
explained.
to some extent, it's incredibly powerful. Realistically,
Yeah.
when you're creating a villain, there are three schools of thought, I think. Firstly, there's making your antagonist impossibly powerful like Dio in some respects, and certainly like the boss from this part 5. The goal of these villains is not to be relatable or likable, but instead to provide a wall for which the good guys are to overcome. Secondly, there's the opposite of what I just demonstrated a villain to be, and that's being weaker than the hero, only to try his best to get more powerful and eventually become that threat. These first two are the most common, and to be honest, both have their ups and downsides.
Yeah, of course.
Characters like Dio can feel less like characters and more like walls of power to overcome. Furthermore, they also have a tendency to get predictable and sort of boring if you over-rely on that archetype too often. The weaker villain has the opposite problem in that they are too relatable. People in general love to cheer for the underdog tenaciously fighting against all odds, and so
Yeah.
putting your protagonist into a more powerful position prior means you need to make certain that your hero is incredibly likable to your reader or viewer in order for them to cheer for them. Alternatively then, there's the third option, which Araki decided to opt for during Diamond is Unbreakable's story.
That's why
with
Kira's so
Kira,
cool.
And Kira ended up being my favorite antagonist out of this series. Instead of having a villain that is obviously weaker or stronger than Josuke, he instead decided to make him a complement to Josuke. Sort of like the other side of a coin, if
Yeah.
you will. I thought Kira was a brilliant foil for Josuke and the most ideal candidate among the JoJo villains for that very reason. And he didn't need time powers either, proven by him not using them once during his fight with Josuke and only using them in the lead up to the battle.
Yeah,
Now,
for the narrative,
obviously,
yeah.
there are ways of screwing that option up too, seen all too well in Marvel films where the superheroes like Iron Man, Captain America, Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, and Black Panther even all seem to face off against evil versions of themselves. Instead of flipping the power set, they flip the personality behind the power, which isn't always bad, but over the course of a series can become formulaic, which I think is JoJo's problem right now with this time manipulation ability. While I did love this scene with Bruno and Giorno in the gloomy hideout confronting the big boss for the very first time, I couldn't help but feel a little underwhelmed when I discovered that, ooh, look, it's time powers
thing
again.
again,
When the
yeah.
powers of this dude exist that could have served as a much more of an interesting matchup against Giorno's powers specifically that we never really got to see. Giorno can give life and he can technically take it away. Now, that is all obviously hinging on the idea that Giorno is the main character, and judging by the way this is going, it seems to be much more of an ensemble cast rather than a particularly focused protagonistic story. So we'll see how things go. Anyways, and so now with this big boss man, after putting
I can't wait to see what he's going to think of the second half.
see how this entire story decides to progress. Anyways, these are just my immediate thoughts on half of Golden Wind, and next week I'll be sharing my thoughts with how the entire story felt for me, as well as analyzing its ending in detail.
Sick.
Next week will be my last JoJo video until more material becomes available to review, and after that I've got a couple of videos I wanted for a while, and then a new series begins in a...
Oh my god! Oh no! I'm gonna have to watch them. Oh my god, no! The Hunter, he's gonna be reviewing Hunter x Hunter! Oh! Oh god! That's it! No! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh! I'm excited for that. Oh, mate. Right. So he's doing second part of that. I hope he does the OVAs. Because those Rohan OVAs were pretty good. They've only just recently come out as well, so I don't know. But thank you guys very much for watching. Oh my god, I'm excited for him to review Hunter x Hunter, man. That'd be nice to go back and check it out. But anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what else you want to discuss in future videos. And I'll see you guys next time.